Okay, we're back.
Josh and I are going to spend a lot of time today talking about CERN, demons, dimensions, Apophis a little bit, if some of you guys are interested in the whole asteroid that's supposed to hit the Earth in 2029. And Josh is just an awesome dude. He's an author. He's a filmmaker. He's a part of Prophecy Watchers now, coming from Skywatch. So he's known Tom Horn. He's wrote with Tom Horn, if you're a Tom Horn fan. And Josh has a whole lot of expertise in quantum physics and all the things, science, Dead Sea Scrolls, all the stuff. Like, Josh's list is long, okay? So with that said, I want to introduce Josh on the stream today, and we're going to dive into a lot of it. So Josh, my also fellow cat buddy, thank you. Yes. Josh, you have 3 cats, right? You have 3?
Yeah, I was just, I saw your cat in the background there, and I was like, that kind of looks like one of mine.
Oh, super. Yeah, that's Nora. She's in every video. She's constantly scratching on stuff. She's always here. So everybody knows Nora on the channel.
Awesome.
But yeah, she's one of my 5. But Josh, guys, is a fellow cat person, so you know I got to have the fellow cat people on the channel. But Josh, why don't you go ahead and open up the conversation with just giving people a little bit of history about yourself and how you got to where you are. You also have a really cool testimony about coming out of New Age, and I know we don't have time to go in that today, but maybe that can be something else we can do later on down the road. But tell people a little bit about your ministry and how you got to where you were.
Sure, yeah. So
Hey, guys, hi, good to see you guys.
Baptist, and I'm really grateful for my upbringing, because these are the people that introduced me to Jesus and really built that foundation of faith that has stood the test of time throughout my whole life, even when I did fall away from the church for a little bit. But the issue was at my church, I've always been really inquisitive and curious, and I've always been like a sci-fi nerd. And so when I was a kid, I would always ask people at the church or the pastor, like, what about aliens? Like, we don't ever talk about that. Like, people see UFOs. Could God have created aliens? And then the answer that I would get was, oh, Josh, that's just demonic. Nah. But they wouldn't.
Yeah, well, we've given her medicine and she hasn't coughed for 2 days now. So
like
the medicine's
working.
working.
Like a Bible verse, or they wouldn't give me a reason. It would just be like, that's just all demonic. And then when I would ask, well, where are we getting that from? How do you know? Well, you just got to take it on faith, Josh.
Yeah. And for an inquisitive mind, it's not enough. My husband is the same way. He's like you. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So it definitely wasn't enough. And so, long story short, when I was like 12 years old, we
Trace, good to see you.
I wasn't in that church, and my mom kind of gave me the choice, and I think it was because she didn't really want to deal with going to church every Sunday either. She was kind of just doing it. I mean, she was a Christian and everything, but I think she was doing the regular church going thing for her parents, for my grandparents. So we moved, and she told me when I was 12, she gave me the choice. She's like, Josh, it's up to you. If you want to keep going to church, we can find one. But if you don't want to deal with it, we can just enjoy our weekends. So, of course, me at 12, I'm like, yeah, let's just enjoy our weekends and not go. And it's like now as an adult, I look back and I think, I know what she was doing. She didn't want to go. But but between those years, I still had all these questions. And so at 12, that was when I started to kind of fall away from the church. I never denied Jesus or anything. There was never a time where I wasn't, at least saved, I think. But,
yeah, I get what you mean. Been there. I've also been there.
Yeah, but I also wasn't living for Christ either. So around 18, 19, somewhere in there, in my early adult years, I still had these questions. And then I had a friend that was into New Age, and she started talking about like what the New Age interpretation of this stuff is, and she knew I was a Christian and everything, but we were both ignorant. Like, I was really ignorant about Christianity, and she was really ignorant about New Age. And we both thought, like, yeah, there's no reason these two things can't just go, which is
Right.
Yeah, and so I got because of that, because here I was asking these questions, nobody was just brushing it off, and people were taking the questions seriously and stuff. So for a few years, for a while, I was into that, and then again, very long story short, I had a big wake up call, and I reached a point where it was like, okay, I cannot do this New Age stuff and be a Christian. It's one or the other. And so I rededicated my life to Christ. I renounced everything New Age. I got rid of all my New Age books and got rid of all that stuff, and basically just started being a Christian really for the first time in my adult life, where it was my choice. I was the one coming to Jesus himself without my family kind of just bringing me along for the ride. So since then, I was kind of lost for a little while, and I was asking, God, well, where do I start now? What do I do now? And one day I was flipping through the channels, and I saw, and this was back in the days of TiVos. This was a really long time ago.
I was the Stone Age.
Yeah,
yeah, basically. So I was.
Tracy would be so ill-informed without Diane's links. The links are brilliant.
I was flipping through the channels, and I saw this show that I'd never heard of before, but the title was appealing to me because I was out of New Age. I renounced New Age, but I was still fresh. And the show's title was It's Supernatural with Sid Roth. And it was on a Christian channel. So I thought, okay, well, I'll check it out. And he had this guest on that I had never heard of before at the time, which is funny now, but his name was L.A. Marzulli.
Hey,
and,
L.A.
Yeah.
He's going to be on the channel in like 2 weeks, so this is
Awesome.
great. Yeah.
Oh, and everybody keep L.A. in prayer with all the fires and everything going on. Yeah. He lives in California, unfortunately. And but yeah, so I'd never heard of the guy before. And he's talking about aliens and Mark of the Beast and Nephilim. I had never heard of the Nephilim before.
Yeah.
And here he was giving me answers to those questions I had since I was a little kid, like how do aliens fit in the Bible? And he was just laying it out in like this 15-minute segment. And then he gave his testimony, and he came out of New Age too. That was his. Yeah, so I took a chance, and I had never done this before. To me, this is somebody on TV. This guy is famous. There's no way I'm going to be able to actually contact him. But I tried anyway. I found his website, filled out the contact form, and just basically gave a brief rundown of what I went through. And I said, when you came out of the New Age, like, what did you do? Like, and so he actually got back in touch with me like the next day, and I actually got to have a phone call with him. And I was like, my heart was pounding. I was all nervous because to me, this is like talking to like a famous actor or something. I was absolutely starstruck by it. But he gave me like a crash course in spiritual warfare, and he talked about how when you in New Age, when you astral project, which was a big thing I was into, you're actually opening these portals, and demons and stuff can get through. You need to use the name of Jesus to close those things. And so we talked for about 20 minutes. I did everything he said, and then it was like there was a piece in my life. There was a piece in the house, and it was a trailer, but there was a piece there that had never been there before, and there was a piece in my life that had never been there before. And so from that moment on, I just started to really dig into his stuff. My wife Christina and I started getting his DVDs and books, and then that led us to other people like Gary Stearman and Tom Horn and all these other people. And it didn't take long until I realized, like, this is my people, like this is my community. This is
I know
what
what
God
you mean.
wants. Yeah. And I also just had this feeling of like, if I went to church for that long and it was my own fault, but got so little out of it where I didn't even know what the Nephilim were, there must be other people like that too. I want to help. I want to get in ministry. So I just had this burning desire, and I absolutely believe it was from God that, I wanted to write books. I wanted to do conferences. I wanted to, make videos, do whatever, but I wanted to like get the word out there basically. And at the time, it's funny thinking back on it, because at the time it's almost like a little kid. Like I was like, I want to be like LA. And,
I mean, in our defense, he does go by Grandpa LA now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a grandparent, but I'm not, so that still works. or
Yeah.
a grandparent for us, right? So I think it's okay.
yeah, it works. And it's so funny now. So that started, and LA has always been great. He's been really like a rock to me throughout this whole thing. It's funny because it's funny now looking back on that first conversation and how absolutely nervous and starstruck I was. Whereas now he and I are really good friends. Like, we text and talk, and he's like a friend now. Like, I mean, it would be like getting starstruck by your neighbor or something. It's just funny how that happened. But yeah, so that's basically the gist of it. I just started self-publishing books. I started my own podcast, which I still do today. It started off as The Sharpening, but now it's just The Sharpening Report. And so that was over a decade ago. That was I don't remember the exact year. My wife would know, but it was a long time ago. So I just been doing that ever since, and just been finding my own niche, finding what topics God has put on my heart to share. And so that just one thing led after another, and that's how I got here today.
Amazing. Well, just so everybody knows, I have linked a crap ton of Josh's books down below. Josh's website, his YouTube channel, all of it's down below. I don't have your podcast link, so I'll go and find a link for that, and I'll add that after the show. But Josh, you guys are gonna love this today. If you don't know Josh's work, so I'm like the excited this is one of my celebrity friends. I'm that person today. So Josh, at the conference, you talked about CERN, and I'm one of those that loves to go down the conspiracy rabbit holes. Like, I love them all. That's what helped me get into this space in 2020, because I started to put together the puzzle pieces of like, something ain't right, and it ain't got nothing to do with the politics and all of that. It's got way more to do with the spiritual world. So Josh, what I kind of want to do is start with CERN. So let's get into maybe like the basics and the mysteries. Can you give us like a quick history of CERN, like what it is? What are they doing there, and what are they trying to accomplish with the experiments that they're doing up there?
Yeah, and so this is interesting. So there's two different ways to answer it. It's like what their official position is, and then what really might be going on. So their official position. Well, just to basically start. So CERN is the organized, that's the body of people that decide what to do with the machine, the LHC, which is the Large Hadron Collider. It's basically a big particle collider. So CERN is not the machine itself. A lot of people get that mixed up. It's basically like NASA and rockets. So NASA decides what to do with the rockets. NASA is the
Hey, Ray, it's
the
good to see you.
that. CERN is the body of people that decide what to do with the particle accelerator. Hey, everyone. Concerning the economically unstable times that we live in, it is a great idea to convert some of your savings into real money. Now, there is a big difference between real money and what we call money, which is actually currency. So our dollar is currency, which fluctuates. Real money, like silver, is a store of value over time. The best way to think of it is like this. If you had saved $1,000 in cash back in the late 60s, the late 1960s, that $1,000 would still be $1,000 today, but it would buy you significantly less today due to inflation. Now, if you saved that same $1,000 in silver back in the 1960s, it would be around $28,000 today. So one of the best ways to protect your purchasing power is in real money, more specifically, silver. Now, you can buy and have the metal shipped discreetly to your door. And what most people don't know is that you can actually convert your IRA or even your 401k into physical silver rather than having all your life savings tied up in the paper fiat system, which is, of course, subject to hyperinflation. So go to dailyrenegade.com right now and click on the Cornerstone Asset Metals banner and sign up to get your free silver report. One of the financial experts will speak with you and find out the best way to protect your savings going forward in these uncertain times. You can also click on the link in the description below that goes directly to cornerstoneassetmetals.com. Make sure you tell them that Josh Peck at Daily Renegade sent you. It is time to stop trusting the evil beast financial system of the world and protect your assets today. And their main position is they're just trying to their official statement, they're trying to find out basically what makes the universe tick. Like, what is the universe made of? How does reality work? How does physical reality work? And they do that by looking at basically just the building blocks of reality through these particle collisions. So that's basically their stated thing. But then there's other weird kind of things though that they've said too. So they've talked about opening portals. They've talked about creating miniature black holes. You know, they talked about a lot of these things. And basically what I came away from it, because I know a couple of scientists that work at CERN too. I mean, there's Christians that work there, you know. And I think what it is that like 99% of like the scientists and people that are working there, they're not doing it for any occult or pagan or any kind of weird reasons. They're really just curious about the universe. That's like most of them. But I do think that there's this, I don't know if you call it like a shadow group. I don't know what you'd call it, but I do think that there are just certain individuals there that kind of do have more of a, what we would consider a dark spiritual kind of worldview around this stuff. Because
do you think they're the main folks that are running it at the top? Kind of like what we see in our current world with the globalism and all of that. You've got the puppeteers up here that run everything. Do you think it's like that and they pass the agendas down?
It could be. Yeah, it might be. Or it might just be totally random. Because because the thing about CERN is it's like multi-nation. So there's a lot of nations involved in it. It's almost like a mini UN. Okay. And so you're going to have people from all sorts of different backgrounds. But I do think when you have people who are interested, because the way they frame it with scientific terms, but when you really look at what they're saying, it's like, okay. So for example, they'll say that what they want to do with the LHC, one of the top things.
Imagine if you're sending all your links died free.
Is to discover extra dimensions. First prove that they exist.
Yep.
And then actually probe extra dimensions and map them out. But then it goes further. They also have said, and this has been even in popular science documentaries like hosted by Brian Greene and stuff like that. So this is not a secret. They also have developed an idea on how to see if there's intelligent, conscious life in these extra dimensions, and they've developed a way. They haven't built it yet, but they've developed like a way to like have communication. So the basic idea is to use gravitons, but gravitons have not technically been discovered yet, but they're working on it, and they probably will be at some point. But the weird thing about gravitons is all of the math says that gravitons have the ability to naturally cross over into extra dimensions if extra dimensions exist. And they do. Extra dimensions actually have to exist because time and space can be bent, and we know that. That's been proven, you know, like time dilation, stuff like that. If you're near like Interstellar, the movie, if you're near a black hole, time runs totally differently than if you're away from it. Well, that's because time and space, they're woven together and they can bend. Well, if they can bend, there must be something for it to bend into. So it's like if I have a piece of paper here, if there was no third dimension, if we didn't have up or down, this would be totally flat and it would be impossible to bend it because there would be no extra third dimension to bend it into. But because I can bend it, means that there's a third dimension, there's an up and down. So for our space and time to be bent the way that it is, it must bend into something. So there is at least one extra dimension. There's probably a lot more than that, but there's at least one. So the idea is to discover gravitons and learn how to manipulate them, which once they can isolate a particle, they can manipulate it any way they want. They already know how to do that. And then affect the spin and create a binary.
Diane, they've funded it all by the federal government. Trump just won't give them the money and they'll have to conform.
Code. So you could have a string of gravitons, one up spin, one down spin, whatever, and to create like a binary, almost like a Morse code. String those together and then just send them into an extra dimension, then set up a detector and see if there's a reply. That's one idea. Wow. And they've been talking about this for well over a decade.
Okay. So do you watch, have you seen Stranger Things? Are you a fan?
Yes.
Okay. So is it, because to help the layman, right, the person that struggled in these types of science classes that are a lot harder, even though my husband was in the same ones, never studied and showed up and got A's, but whatever. I'm not mad about it still. But anyway, is it safe for the layman to think about, kind of like if you've watched Stranger Things, to see them blasting that machine through and then they open this dimension and you've got the upside down? Is it kind of that? Is that how we can think of it as a layman if we don't understand all of these scientific terms? Yeah, that would be more of a physical portal. This graviton thing, you wouldn't need a portal to do it because the gravitons can already they're already doing this on their own anyway. Okay.
So that would be if you wanted to physically bring something here, or physically, like if we wanted to transport like a person to an extra dimension, it would be something similar. You know, that's a good way of putting it. It's something similar to that, like Stranger Things. But when I think about you know, the science director has even said, Sergio Bertolucci of CERN, he's even said, you know, when we do this, you know, if we open portals or whatever, some unknown unknowns might come through, whatever that means. So every once in a while, you'll get these higher ups at CERN that say these like weird things like that. It's like, well, what is that? Now, the weird thing about this gravitational communication system thing, the way I look at it, isn't that just a modern day technological way of praying to and venerating ancient false gods? Because if you think about it, we know that there's more beyond the physical world. We as Christians know that. We know there's heaven, there's hell, there's angels, there's demons, there's God. You know, we know all of these things. So the scientists may not know that, but the only thing that they're going to be communicating with are fallen angels and demons. God's not going to answer that. You know, a good angel, an obedient angel, isn't going to answer that.
Yeah.
No. It's kind of like they're playing with a Ouija board almost. Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like they're sending messages. And what is prayer? But you know, you're sending messages. You're trying to communicate with something bigger than yourself. And that's essentially what prayer is. So they're doing the same thing, but they're taking this technological route to get there. And so that's concerning. Now, the good thing is that they don't have the technology to be able to do that yet, because gravitons haven't been discovered. And then somebody might be saying, but Josh, maybe they have discovered it and they haven't told us. Impossible, because man's ego and pride will not stand for that. Because whoever is the first one to actually discover a graviton, instant Nobel Prize and a ton of money, ton of funding. I mean, it's too much fame to turn down. I don't see any human being doing that.
That makes sense. And it would be their life's work. They would want that. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Sold me on that. That's fine.
Yeah. It would be the biggest discovery. It would be, remember in 2012, some people might remember this. They discovered the Higgs boson particle. And they've been looking for that since like the 60s. And that was huge news in 2012. Well, the graviton would be even bigger than that. This would be like the greatest discovery in all of quantum physics.
Yeah, why? I'm guessing Shawnee's got the flu, because it's very rare she doesn't show up. So just say some prayers for Shawnee and her family.
So I don't think that any physicist or anybody involved in that kind of work is going to say, well, no, let's keep it a secret from the public so we can talk to these things. They would just do it publicly. They've already been talking about it. They put stuff like that on their website. They're really open about what they want to do. They don't use terms like angels or demons like we would, but they'll say like unknown unknowns, or they'll say extra dimensional intelligences. You know, they'll say stuff like that. So the vast majority, again, of people that work at CERN just think, okay, this is just exploration. It's like if we were exploring space and wanted to see if there's life on another planet or something. They look at it as like no different than that. We as Christians see a difference because it's like, okay, another planet, that's still in our physical universe. This is something outside of our physical universe that the Bible expressly forbids us to interact with. For good reason, because there are things there that want to kill you. There are things there that want to destroy you and deceive you, and not even kill you physically, but kill you spiritually, you know, deceive you to where you can't, you're following these things instead of Jesus. So when you die, you're not saved and you're eternally damned. That's their goal.
It almost feels like it's even like New Age on steroids almost.
Yes. Yep. It's like a technological New Age. And a lot of physicists, not all of them, but a lot of physicists do have this New Age kind of bent. And you know this too, like anybody who's ever even interacted at all with New Age, they love quantum physics. New Age, because they like taking it and twisting it and turning it into meaning other things. Like New Age loves quantum physics the way that they love Christianity. And what I mean by that is they love taking the words and twisting it to mean something totally different. So you'll see, like in New Age, there's a famous experiment called the double slit experiment, and basically all it does is it just shows that particles behave differently in different conditions. The way that it's usually framed is if you're observing a particle, it behaves as a particle. But if you're not observing it, if nobody's looking at it, if there's no detector, then it behaves as a wave. So what New Age will do, and there is a scientific reason for that makes a lot of sense that I can explain. But what New Age will do is they'll take that and they'll stop it right there. They won't actually figure out why that's happening, and they'll say, see, we create our own reality. You know, what you expect is what you're gonna manifest into your life. And they get into all this weird New Agey stuff, and that's not what's happening at all. We're human beings who have eyes that need photons. We need light to be able to see anything. So when you're trying to observe a particle, even in a detector, you need light. You're adding all the.
Oh, so Disney's not willing to fund DEI on its own, only willing to do it with the government's help. That's very telling.
These particles, all these light particles, you're destroying your own experiment. You know, that's why it behaves that way. If the particle is not being observed, then there's no photons that's interacting with the wave, so the wave just behaves normally as it would. But if you're looking at it, all of a sudden you're adding all of these photons. It's basically like showering, like raining all these other particles onto this one particle. It's going to mess it up, and that's why like the wave, they call it the collapse of the wave function. But basically, it's that the particle just is a particle now because you're destroying it with these bullets of photons. So it makes perfect sense why that would happen. But New Age doesn't care. Just like New Age doesn't care about the truth of Christianity, but they love our terminology. They love using our words against us and using it to try to deceive Christians like myself. Years and years and years ago into thinking like, yeah, you can marry New Age and Christianity. They go along perfectly. They try to do that with science. So there are some physicists that have kind of a New Age bent to them, and they'll interpret things like that. Not all of them, probably not even most of them, but enough where you see them in documentaries and stuff. So yeah, that's a great point that comes up quite a bit.
Okay. So CERN has been associated, obviously, with some super strange and dark imagery. And I know that anybody here who's gone down the CERN rabbit hole, they've seen like the statue of Shiva. They're seeing the references
to Phil, good to see you,
mate. So I think you're kind of hinting at some of that. But is there any truth to the idea that this imagery does reveal that there might be a deeper and perhaps even sinister purpose for CERN?
Yeah, I think so. And whether or not the people themselves know what they're doing, again, I think most of them don't, but probably a few do. I think they're at least being influenced, because the strange thing is when CERN was first built, when they were first putting CERN together and building the LHC, they picked a really inconvenient place to actually build it. It's on the border of France and Switzerland for some reason, and they had to build it underground, and it was a weird place to pick. But while they were digging, and who knows why they did this again, and this might have been a demonic influence, but while they were digging to the hole to put the machine in, they actually had to stop construction because they discovered the ruins of an ancient Roman city called Apollonia. And that ancient Roman commune or whatever it was, they venerated Apollo, basically, and the original Roman inhabitants there believed that that's where the bottomless pit was, which is totally weird. It's like, what are the chances of that? Now, I don't think that people even knew that was there. So to me, it's like, why did they pick that place? Was that a demonic influence that they might not have even known why they picked it, but they just did because they were being influenced? Or did somebody know something? I don't know, but that's a weird coincidence because Apollo, that connects with Apollyon / Abaddon from Revelation 9, where the bottomless pit opens. And then, you bring up that they've got this statue out in front of Shiva, which is it's a part of like the Hindu Trinity, and the depiction, it looks like Satan coming through a portal of flames. But
it does.
Yeah, really, what's being depicted there, it's the Nataraya dance of Shiva, where Shiva destroys the universe so Brahma can like recreate it again or something. And so it's like, what an odd thing to put in front of like the CERN that has this Hadron Collider thing that people are worried is going to open black holes and destroy the world and stuff.
That just doesn't seem like coincidence to me. Like I just can't, you know what I mean? Like I can't get on board with like, well, that's just, like that just is too on the nose.
yeah, same here. So it's like, it's like even if I gave everybody there the benefit of the doubt, and even if nobody there knows what's going on, it seems like there's at least some demonic influence
Yes.
leading them towards certain things. Because you
Exactly.
certainly don't see any Christian imagery. You know, it's not that. It's all this like Indian like universe destroying kind of stuff.
Right.
So of course that leads people to think. So the history there with the Polyacum and Apollo and the bottomless pit. And then even the imagery that they're showing today with the Shiva statue and it looks like a portal. So that does make people think like, wow, what is going on here? This seems satanic. You know, no one gets into full-time ministry to make money. At least no one should. Given that, Daily Renegade accepts donations from those who care to help keep us going. Now, because Daily Renegade does not want to be told by the government what we can and can't say, we're not 501c3. So you're donating.
Gee, why, that's really bad. They're killing off the bees. The plants can't get fertilized. Wow. That's a really cunning move. That's very clever for the enemy.
Donations are not tax deductible, but that's not why you're giving anyway, to get something back for yourself. Speaking of which, we here are never going to promise that if you donate, God will reward you with even more financial success. We're not about making promises for God here. But what I can promise is your donations are very much appreciated and help the continuation of everything we do here at Daily Renegade to reach the world with the truth of the Bible. Also, as many of you know, my son Nathan has had some very serious medical issues that we are treating with good, all-natural and holistic remedies. But of course, those are very expensive and are not covered by insurance. So your donations help go towards his health care as well. If you can't afford to donate, you can always donate your time in prayer, which is far more valuable anyway. Let's be serious. So pray for our wisdom, pray for God's guidance for us, and that we never lose focus on what's really important, which is using Daily Renegade as a light of truth that the world so desperately needs right now, especially in these times. As always, thank you so much for your generosity, and I pray God blesses you greatly.
Wow. Okay. So we know that they are in some form or fashion trying to access other dimensions, right?
Yes.
And obviously, not everybody there. Right, they are. So, I think you kind of already answered the question, but more of your opinion based on your research and what you know. Do you think there is a nefarious purpose, or do you think that it is just like it probably is just what you just said? If it's not nefarious, where some people know about it, they are being influenced demonically because they're not saved. They don't have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, so they're not even getting a check in their spirit that some of this stuff is even like going to a doorway that they really don't want to open. So in other words, do you think it's nefarious in the sense that it is or it isn't, or it just might be because of the influence?
I think it is. Some of it is nefarious, whether the people know it there or not, because there are people there that are very excited about this idea of contacting extra dimensional intelligences. That's how they, we would say that's like when I say extra dimensional, to me just means spiritual. Like everything that physics says about extra dimensions. And it's actually, and I don't mean just interpretations of what people say, but like the actual science-based fact of how extra dimensions would work and how it would operate with the idea that we have this three-dimensional physical universe. It matches up perfectly with what the Bible describes as well, except that they're just not going to use words like spiritual or heaven or hell. They're going to use other words. But I think that they do have this drive that they want. They clearly don't want like the God of the Bible. Yeah. I mean, like I said, there are a few Christians that.
Hey, Shawnee.
And so I'm not throwing them in this camp. But
Shawnee, we thought you might have had the flu and you with your family.
There's plenty of people. There's plenty of physicists, scientists that just absolutely scoff at the idea of Christianity. Like, oh my gosh, if anybody has ever watched anything by like Lawrence Krauss talk about Christianity, I mean, it is the most like vitriolic, hateful stuff. And there's a lot of physicists like that, but there are still these physicists that they want to connect. It's a human thing to want to connect to something higher than ourselves because we are made by God. We're supposed to have that drive, just like a child has a drive to want to know his mother and father. It's the same thing with us and God, except that some people, they just really don't like God. So they want to try to replace God with some of these other things. And a lot of physicists do that with these extra dimensional intelligences. Now they can wrap it in any kind of scientific veneer they want, but really what they're doing is they're petitioning and venerating ancient false gods, demons, fallen angels, whether they know it or not. And so yeah, while they might think that they're just doing something scientifically, really in their heart, and I think if they were really honest with themselves, they would say we are really trying to connect with something higher. I mean, it's the same reason why people get really obsessed with like ancient alien stuff. We all have this drive that we want to connect to something higher than ourselves. God put that in us, and it's because we all just intuitively know there's something more. There's something broken here. You know, we're supposed to connect with something higher than ourselves. Just what is it? And it's God. It's the Bible, and everything in the Bible explains why we have that. You know, the fall of man, sin, all of that stuff. Death. It explains all of it. But the issue is a lot of people don't want to accept that because it means they have to change their lives. They have to do something. They have to be accountable. You know, aliens don't care how you live your life. Aliens don't care what kind of sin you're involved in. You know, extra dimensional intelligences don't care if you want to, you know, do this or that God says is wrong. So there's no accountability with these other things. We know ultimately there will be because there's a final judgment, but to them, where they're at right now, there's no accountability to these. So why would they pick God when God is going to hold them accountable for their actions? And really it's because they just, that's their rejection of God. They would rather be the authors of their own lives, of their own destiny, of their own fate, and go seek out these other things. And I do think it's possible that might actually happen one day, and that might be what Revelation 9 is all about. You know, I've written about this, and I talked about it.
Yeah, Phil, you get a lot of problems with your Wi-Fi now, don't you? It only really started when you started streaming, so you might be getting attacked, mate.
In my presentation, you know, what if there does come a day where they do get this communication system up and running? And what if that's the time where God's like, all right, you want these false gods, you
have it your way.
Gods. Have it your way. Open the bottomless pit. Let's see how they treat you. I mean, it's a similar thing to the Tower of Babel.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Genesis gets into a lot of detail about it, obviously, and then there's some stuff from the book of Jasher that can kind of help explain it. And that's an extra biblical book. It's not in the Bible. Jasher is mentioned in the Bible, but we don't know for 100% sure if the Jasher we have now is the same as the Jasher that's mentioned in the Bible.
Yep.
But regardless, it does go into a little bit more detail about the Tower of Babel incident, and it doesn't conflict with the story at all. So to me, it's like it could be true. It makes sense. But it seems like what the problem was, it wasn't that the tower was so high and it made God mad. It wasn't the height of the tower. It was some type of, it was what they were actually planning on doing. So Jasher says that they wanted to enter heaven, they wanted to kill God, and they wanted to set up idols of their false gods, because apparently Nimrod had gotten everybody all crazy and paranoid, saying that God was going to send another flood. So they had to petition their old gods, you know, the old pre-flood gods, to protect them from that, which is like totally insane. So that was kind of the idea. And you know, if that is the case, it seems like it's like a repeat of that. So in the Tower of Babel, God eventually had enough, and he said, okay, you're all crazy because you're all grouped together, like all these people in one spot. I told you to spread out for a reason. I think this is why like big cities are usually insane, but like if you're more rural, you know, kind of small towns, they're pretty sane people.
Come on, preach, Josh. Get on and preach.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't think we as people are really meant to be all put together in this like small space with all of it. Like, but that's what happened at the Tower of Babel, and it totally turned them insane. And we see that today in like big cities like New York or LA. I mean, people are like insane. And so it's similar to how like God had enough at one point. He's like, okay, we're going to put an end to this. And part of that too, Deuteronomy speaks a little bit about this, but part of that too was it wasn't just that God scattered the nations and changed their languages, but it was also that He's like, I'm gonna put these false gods, these things that you keep going after, I'm gonna put them in charge of your nations, and let's see how That's why we have all these false religions today.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Josh. Yes, I agree. I totally agree. Absolutely. Yeah. That's great.
So I could totally see a situation in Revelation 9 where a similar thing happens, and I don't know if it's going to be CERN. It could be that. It could be other things, but where people are trying to reach out to these false gods again, and God's like, okay, you want them, you got them. Open the bottomless pit, and then they just come out and just torture all of these all these people, the non-believers. And they're not even allowed to die. So it's like,
I know, man, that whole chapter is nuts. Like, I ain't gonna be here for it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's scary.
Me too. Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just that, like the not wanting to die. I don't know the mechanism on how that's gonna work, how people can't die, but it's weird. It's like, you think these things are gonna give you eternal life. Let's see what kind of eternal life you get when you follow these things that are totally evil. And it's like they're tortured and they can't die. I mean, it's like a taste of hell.
Definitely. I wonder if some of that has to do, though, with, and we don't have to go off on this tangent, but like the modern day Tower of Babel with the transhumanism movement, the merging of man and machine, giving up your humanity, like what this, where Elon and Peter Thiel and all these dudes are going, like this is where it's headed. So I wonder if that has something to do with it too, that they can't die. It's because they've already given it up. They've given up the humanity part.
Yep, I absolutely think that has something to do with it. I think probably the Antichrist is a literal son of Satan, and I could even get into that and explain why. But I think that the Antichrist will be a Nephilim. He'll be a hybrid, and I think that he does something genetically where the mark of the beast is something where he gives he gives like a piece of himself to humanity, and it makes them immortal. But
irredeemable, and that's why they become irredeemable. Yeah,
because they're not human anymore. Exactly, they have given up their humanity for this Nephilim Antichrist satanic thing. They have fully rejected God, and they even have to. You can't be tricked into the mark. They have to agree to it. They have to actually say it. So nobody can. It's not. You can't trick somebody with the mark. It's a heart thing too. You have to reject. You have to honor the Antichrist. You have to reject Jesus. So yeah, I mean, all of these pieces definitely fit together, and it's so interesting. We live in a time where we're seeing these things play out right now. We're seeing the first building blocks of things like the mark of the beast. We're seeing how something like the mark of the beast could get rolled out worldwide, because we just saw it with the. I probably can't even say the words without it.
I just say wacky tacky. Wacky tacky. Everybody knows what wacky tacky is.
There you go. Yeah, so it's like we can see how these things could like happen pretty much now, and so I don't think we're too far off from all that. It's definitely strange times. So you're right. All this stuff does absolutely connect.
Absolutely. Okay. So one of your books that I got from your conference was, make sure it's looking right in there you go. Quantum Creation. I got this for me, but it really was more for my husband because he has your kind of brain. So as we kind of dive, because what I want to do is really hammer out on the last half of our show, and let me know, Josh, if we're going over time too, because we may be a little over our mark. Okay, so I want to be respectful of your time, but I want to dive into a little bit of quantum physics here, and then I want to get into the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then tie that into, I say Apophis, is that right, or is it Apophis?
Either way is fine.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So quantum physics. If you can give everybody can you dumb down what quantum physics is? Because when I hear it, I immediately go back to the Big Bang Theory, listening to Sheldon, and feeling like my mind is going to short circuit. So how does quantum physics kind of fit into some of this stuff that we're talking about with CERN, and where all of this is going from everything that we've taken the conversation to today?
Yeah, definitely. So the good thing is quantum physics is not unattainable for lay people. I'm a lay person. I did not go to school for this. This is all just my own private study. And the problem is a lot of it is we've been taught wrong, but also the way that scientists talk is impossible to understand. It's like they're speaking, like you said, Big Bang Theory. It's like they're speaking a different language, and it's almost irritating. It's like, it's like, who do you think you are? Just speak like a person. And when they're doing it, it's a lot of. I'm not going to say every single one of them, but a lot of them. There's almost like this haughty kind of ego, like using these just ridiculously big words. And but that's why you get some physicists, some scientists that are like really popular because they know how to speak to a general audience. So people like, I'm not like endorsing these people or anything, but people who are popular, like Brian Greene or Neil deGrasse Tyson or Michio Kaku or people like that. They have a way to explain it. That's why they've gotten so popular. But basically, quantum physics, just the simplest explanation is the study of the building blocks of reality, the absolute. When we say fundamental, what we mean is like the smallest of the small. Like if you think of like a Lego set, it's like you think of like what the smallest of the small building blocks of reality. So you have molecules that are made of atoms. You have atoms that are made of other subatomic particles, and then what are those subatomic particles made of, and then what are those made of? And it's just trying to get down to the lowest level to see what really everything is made of, and that's all quantum. And it also studies the behaviors of those pieces. So quantum, that word just means the smallest of the small that we know of, and then physics is just how things behave in reality. So it's just looking at the smallest little bits of reality and just seeing how it behaves. That's really all it is.
That's a lot simpler than honestly I really thought it was. No, that's great. This is why we love you, because you have the ability to do that for those of us who go, these are $10 words. I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, exactly. And they do that on purpose too. And because I don't think a lot of them, I don't think they want the competition, but I just think people want to feel like they're smarter than everybody, so they'll talk like that. But it really does exclude the general public from science and from a lot, especially quantum physics. The basic concepts. Now, like there are complicated things. Like I'm not trying to just undersell the whole thing. Like I can't make heads or tails of the actual mathematics. Math is very difficult for me, so I can't do that. But the big concepts, anybody can. You can't really lie in math. Somebody might think, well, Josh, if you can't double check the math, how do you know this physicist here is giving you the right math? It's like, well, all of that's peer reviewed by a lot of other people. If there was a mistake, they would pick it up. And mathematics is so concrete. You really can't. You can lie about the interpretation of it, but the actual math itself, you really can't. So I trust the math, but I can't do it myself. So there are complicated things, but the big concepts, the major concepts, that's available to everybody. We just need to learn to think a little differently. And we need to really not listen to these overcomplicated scientists, and then try to find people that can break it down, but also that have not like a horrible bias. Because like people like I said, like Lawrence Krauss, there are times that he can, I already harped on him. Let's say Sean Carroll. I like Sean Carroll.
Okay.
But he's definitely like not a Christian at all. He's very opposed to it. Actually, if people are interested, there's a really good debate, and it is going to be one of these that they're both talking like it's going to make your head spin. But there's William Lane Craig did a debate with Sean Carroll years and years and years ago, and it's great. It is because even William Lane Craig, he even has he's like a theology guy. He speaks in a way that's kind of over my head sometimes too, and it's like, what are those words? But in that, yeah. In that debate, Sean Carroll actually shows his bias because they were talking about like an afterlife and if there's any proof of it. And then Sean Carroll said, and this is like my go-to example for the difference between observation and interpretation. So observation is just basically what's concrete, what's fact, what's objective truth. The interpretation is like somebody looks at that and says, well, what does that mean? What does that mean for everybody? So they were talking about the afterlife, and when it was Sean Carroll's time, he said he was talking about quantum field theory, which if we want to get into that, we can. But he was basically saying, and it's true, quantum field theory is absolutely true. It is the most accurate science that we have today. It's 100% true. The LHC at CERN would not work the way that it does if quantum field theory weren't true. And again, I can get into what that means in a bit. But what he says, so that's the observation, that's the concrete truth. So then what he did, though, was he made it an interpretation. He made a subjective interpretation. And Sean Carroll says, we know there's no afterlife because in quantum, there's no quantum field to take the information of somebody after they die anywhere.
Don't say that.
And so that's an interpretation. Quantum field theory doesn't say that. He's just making a guess. That's his opinion. Like there's no science. There's nothing in quantum field theory that. Why would you need a quantum field? We're talking about the soul here. Like that goes beyond quantum particles and all this. I have just started a Substack. What is a Substack, you might ask? It is a place that contains early access to audio-only podcast versions of full Daily Renegade videos, plus my personal blog, which includes original articles, show notes, interview transcripts, and so much more. This is the only place to get this amazing resource, and it is not available to the general public. Adding a subscription to my Substack to your Daily Renegade membership will ensure that you have full access to every format of everything that I do. So head on over to joshpeck.substack.com or click on the link in the description below to join up now for only $5 a month or $50 a year. And if you can do it, I suggest doing the $50 a year because it's cheaper in the long run, and essentially you get 2 months for free. So I cannot wait to see you there. Take care and God bless. But that's an example of like an interpretation that he made, but he presented it as if it were science. Like the whole multiverse theory is like that. The whole multiverse theory is interpretation of stuff. There's no real scientific basis in that. It's just it's a guess.
When you say multiverse, right? I'm gonna go comic book here.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of like,
Marvel.
you know, okay, exactly. So we love the show The Flash on CW.
Yeah,
My husband is a huge comic book nerd. You should see his office. But anyway, okay.
Yeah, we love the Flash as well. A lot of quantum physics in it.
So when they start talking about Earth 2, Earth 3, so when you say multiverse, that is what you mean.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because there are two different like definitions of multiverse. There's one I believe in, one I don't. So the many worlds interpretation is what like DC and Marvel comics and stuff.
Yes.
That's many worlds. That's where for every choice you make, there's another universe where you made a different choice, and there's other yous, there's other versions of yous, there's other universes, and it's infinite. All sorts of problems with that. Stephen Meyer did a great interview, and he wrote a book called Return to the God Hypothesis, I think. And in that, he totally debunks the many worlds version of the multiverse. Like, there's so many problems with it. But outside of that, there's another version that I think is real, and this is, I don't even know if it really has a name, but this is like the extra dimension idea. So it's not exactly like multiverse in a sense of like multiple universes, because a universe you think of like as a three-dimensional reality or three-dimensional space. The extra dimensional idea is that we're in the third dimension, like we exist in 3 dimensions and one of time. But just speaking about space here, there's 3 dimensions of space: forward, backward, up, down, side to side. Those are our 3 main directions. And what would a 4th dimension of space look like? Well, we can't picture it in our heads. We can't, but we know it exists because space bends into something. If there's a 4th, why not a 5th or a 6th? And in quantum creation, I go through and I think there's actually 12.
Well, I was gonna say, I think you talked about 12. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of modern physics stops at 11. And I think that that's right, but I think what they miss is that there's a fundamental, you could call it a 0th dimension. It's one below the 1st dimension. So the 1st dimension is a line. A line is made up of single points, single dots. So if you just have one dot and no line, that would be like the 0th. That would be like the foundation of all dimensions. So when you add that in, then you come to 12, and I think that that's probably correct. But when I don't see these as like physical like universes, like the reality we live in. I see this as like different sections of heaven, or I don't know how it all works, but we would see it as all spiritual stuff. Mm-hmm. I actually think spiritual stuff is more physical than here, like it's more physical than physicality is. Because every dimension you go up, you're adding something. You have a point. You have a point. And then you go up to the 1st dimension, well, now you have a bunch of points in a line. That's a lot more reality. Now you add the 2nd dimension, now you got a bunch of lines in a row to make a plane. That's a lot more reality. Then you go to the 3rd, you got a bunch of planes stacked up to make, a cube or whatever. That's even more reality. So the idea is to go even above that. What would the 4th dimension be like? Well, it would be made of something like that, but there would be more of it. And I actually think that this explains a lot of mysteries in the universe. There's a big mystery about dark matter. There's something out there in the universe that we can't see or interact with that is affecting gravity somehow. Well, how could that be? Remember, gravity can traverse dimensions. You could have an extra dimensional object, you know, say like the throne of God or something, or anything. I think heaven's very expansive. There's lots of stuff there, and that would, if that exists, that would affect our gravity, and we would have no way to detect it. And that's exactly what we see. They call it dark. They call it dark matter because they have no idea what it is. I think that's what it is. I think it's just extra dimensional stuff. Even the Earth itself. The Earth is more. The Earth affects gravity. You can say it like this: the Earth weighs more than it should. Weight is like not exactly the right word, but that's like there's based on what we know about how much Earth there is, it's affecting gravity too much. It's more massive somehow. There's too much
Okay, that's pretty interesting.
effect on gravity. Earth is basically heavier than it should be. Well, why is that? Well, we hear, we read about in the Bible that things like hell is in the bowels of the earth. You know, I don't think that you can drill down into the earth and actually see hell physically, but I do think that that could be another dimension, and it could be located.
I did that in Russia. I drilled into the hell 12 kilometers down.
In the center of our earth, and there's other things too. It talks about, like, you know, pillars and stuff and all this extra dimensional stuff. If that's there, if that's a part of the construct of earth that we can't see, we should expect that the earth would affect gravity more than it does based on what we can physically see. And it does. Like, that's actually been proven. No one knows why, but I think the Bible explains it. So stuff like that, that's what gets me excited about quantum physics. It's like there's these mysteries that these physicists have that I think the Bible gives explanation for. And it's just absolutely fascinating. I kind of went on a tangent there, and I forgot your
No, it's great. No, you're great, because you actually just answered my next question, which is why I'm smiling, which is, does the Bible give us any insights that align with quantum physics? What quantum physics is revealing about dimensions and realms beyond our own? And it's yes, just based on what you just said. So that's pretty amazing. And I think this is why, again, this topic is so interesting in general, because so many people are wrapped up in the science and make it overcomplicated. But the Bible is not some outdated set of books that doesn't address this stuff. It's just that the way it's been presented by secular science is trying to discredit that information and make it something that it's not. And so that's what's wild to me.
Yeah, even in the book of Ezekiel, we get an example of something that today is called extra dimensional unfolding, which is a big fancy word, but basically the thought exercise is, if you had an object that's 4-dimensional, how could you show that to a 3-dimensional being and have it make sense? Okay, well, we can't really think in 4 dimensions. So let's imagine that there's a 2-dimensional universe called Flatland. This is an old thought experiment, and it's really cool. But think about, like, just a totally flat universe. There's no up or down in this universe. It doesn't even have to be big. It can just be right in front of you. And the beings on there are called Flatlanders, and they're just simple shapes, you know, squares, circles, whatever. If I had a cube and I wanted to show that to the Flatlanders, how would I do it? I really can't, because even if I put the cube in Flatland, they don't have up or down. They're only going to see this a square section of it.
Yep.
So what I could do is I could unfold the cube into its panels, and I could lay that flat onto Flatland, and that would look like a cross. It would be 6 squares basically, and you got a line of 4 and then 2 coming off the ends, and they wouldn't be able to put the cube shape together in their head, but they would have access to the most amount of information about this cube. So that's what's called extra dimensional unfolding. I, as an extra dimensional being to a Flatlander, would take this 3-dimensional object, unfold it, place it into a lower dimension so beings there can understand it. Well, so the idea is have a 4-dimensional cube called a hypercube. If you unfolded that into 3 dimensions, what would that look like? And we can actually figure that out. It's called a tesseract, and it's basically like a 3-dimensional cross made of cubes with 2 extra arms coming out the other ends. And that would be an unfolded hypercube, 4-dimensional cube for us. We can't put together that in our minds to get what the shape would actually be, but we would have the most amount of information about it. Well, now imagine if you take that shape, the tesseract, it's already a complicated kind of shape. Imagine you take that and you want to show that to it.
The Marvel Universe uses Tesseract. I think DC as well. It's a really strong power base.
2-dimensional being, you'd have to unfold it again. But now we run into problems because some of the panels, some of the squares of these other cubes are going to overlap with other panels of some of the other cubes. So to a flatlander, it would look like they're kind of melding together. Well, in Ezekiel, you get in the first chapter, you get this amazing vision.
Welcome back, Phil.
This amazing vision of these angels. But then he adds some really weird details. Their wings are melded together. Their legs are melded into like one hoof. Their faces are melded. Like, and it actually, like, when you look at the Hebrew words, when it says they're joined and connected, it's like a melding. And Ezekiel doesn't really understand how to even know what he's looking at, but he's just recording it as he sees it. That's extra dimensional. If they are from the fifth dimension, at least, because you'd have to unfold at least twice to get this melding effect. Okay. These angels would be at least from, maybe higher, but at least from the fifth dimension, and they're in a sense being unfolded in a way that Ezekiel can even know what he's looking at or somewhat understand it. That's the natural way that would look. There is no way that somebody 2,600 years ago knew enough about quantum physics and extra dimensional unfolding to just make that up. Like, it's absolutely real. I mean, it's almost like without knowing it, Ezekiel was like one of the first quantum physicists without even knowing that he was. And he wasn't, but I mean, he was seeing this, and that's exactly what we would expect to see by everything we understand in modern quantum physics about extra dimensions and how they would operate in our reality. So stuff like that is absolutely fascinating and exciting to me, because it's like, I look at that, it's like, there is no way that was made up. Nobody can say that the Bible is just like Lawrence Krauss, like saying like, oh, it's just a bunch of goat farmers, goat herders, and it's like, for one thing, I don't think goat herding is as easy of a job as you think it is. Like, I don't know how to do it. Like,
right? Yeah.
They weren't idiots. Like they weren't done. But people like that, they just hate Christianity so much they say stuff like that. But it's like, how can you read something like that and then think that it's probably just made up? Doesn't make any sense. So that's one example, and there's lots of others throughout the Bible. But yeah,
that was really cool, because honestly, you took a concept for me that I feel like, again, is hard with my brain to break down, and I feel like I just understood that and can visually see that. Good. So thank you. I hope that they all felt the same way. That was really cool. Okay, so let's kind of dive into the Dead Sea Scrolls a little bit. Yeah. So I know you have a ton of knowledge in this realm, and again, this is part of what also makes your work fascinating. And you've done a lot with Ken Johnson, of course, Tom Horn, and a plethora of the guys who work with the Dead Sea Scrolls. I actually have an email out to Ken because I want Ken to come on and talk about some of this stuff too. But one of the things that's fascinating to me is that you guys are talking a lot about 25 and 26 and some of the prophetic things that are in the Dead Sea Scrolls for those years. So can you shed light on a couple of those prophecies, like what they might say, how they connect, and if there's any connections to this?
Great question.
Around some of the stuff that we talked about today, about the thinning of the veil, all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So the Essenes were a group that were contemporaries with the Pharisees and Sadducees. They lived in Qumran, at the time of Christ, but even before. And what caused, when you finish the Old Testament, everything in Israel makes sense. They're all together. But then in the New Testament, when it opens up, it's like everything's different. There's all these groups now. Well, what happened, there's about 400 years in between the Old Testament and New Testament. Apparently what happened was, I think it was most likely when Antiochus Epiphanes came in and desecrated the temple and all that. He gave the Jewish leadership, like an ultimatum. He said, okay, we can either just destroy you, or we'll let you do some of your Jewish things, but you have to adopt our calendar, our Seleucid calendar, and which was a pagan lunar calendar. And they some of them said, okay, we'll do that. We don't want to be destroyed. Another group said, no, we are commanded to keep our solar calendar. And I'll get into that in a minute. We're to keep our solar calendar. We're leaving. And then so they escaped. They eventually found their way to Qumran. Now, so the Essenes said their calendar, the lunar calendar that the Jews have used is actually a pagan calendar and was not the one that God intended. Rather, that the Essenes kept the proper solar calendar that God gave to Adam. We've only been able to very recently put this calendar together because the Dead Sea Scrolls are so fragmented.
Yeah.
But since like 2018, I think, was when the final piece of the puzzle was finally figured out, and we were able to understand how this solar calendar worked. And you bring up Ken Johnson, he actually has. we have created a wall calendar of the Essene calendar that you can get. It has our calendar, and then underneath it, it has the Dead Sea Scroll calendar, so you can actually look and see, check dates. And the interesting thing about this calendar,
I'll add that, by the way. I'll grab that from the sites and add it to the description box. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. The interesting thing about this calendar, the fascinating thing, after everything's pieced together, it is exactly the calendar every book of the Bible uses that uses a calendar. I've talked about it many times before, but the ancient Jewish group called the Essenes, who were around at the time of Christ, said that they were the ones who kept the original prophetic calendar God gave to Adam. Did you know that calendar has actually been reproduced today from the fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls? That's right, and now you can own one for yourself. So the Dead Sea Scroll wall calendar is now available and contains both the Essenes calendar as well as our own calendar, so you can compare the dates and see if they fall on anything interesting or prophetic in this amazing and ancient calendar. The calendar itself was developed by Dr. Ken Johnson and put into print by yours truly. So proceeds from the sales of this calendar go to support both Dr. Ken Johnson's ministry as well as Daily Renegade. It's amazing because this is the exact calendar that the Bible itself uses from Genesis all the
gold standard, gold dust, pot of gold, solid gold, golden opportunity. Is it just me or is there some kind of clue here?
all the way to Revelation. It's a great study tool and can even make a great gift for your prophecy-loving friends and family members. Click on the link in the description below to pick up yours today. Like from Genesis to Revelation, even in prophecy. So as far back as Genesis, I showed that in my, actually I got them here, my new 2-volume set, which you can get at prophecywatchers.com.
Those are in the description box too, guys. Those are down there.
Awesome. But yeah, I show in there, you can like the flood of Noah. There's a lot of day counts in there. So-and-so days this happened, so-and-so days this happened. You can map that all out on the Essene calendars. Things fall on feast days. That makes sense. This doesn't work on any other calendar. And then you can even take prophecy from Revelation. You can figure out a big debate. Do the two witnesses come in the first half of the tribulation or the second half? And that's been debated among Christians for a long time. Well, now we have a definitive answer.
I didn't know it was a debate. Obviously, I think you come in the first half of tribulation.
Has to be the first half because...
Yeah. I never knew there was a debate about that. Obviously, it's the first half.
With this calendar, everything they do lines up perfectly, beautifully. Like the abomination of desolation actually happens on like a really important feast day. And what is it? The Day of Atonement. And we know that because when you read Revelation 8, right before there's, okay, so Revelation 8, I got to go back a little bit. I'm getting excited.
You're okay. No, I know. Same. Me too. I'm like, go, Josh, go.
So the reason that the Essenes didn't want to abandon the calendar is they said that it was so important that feast days and temple rituals were done on the exact right days, not only because God said so, but because angels in heaven were performing similar duties in the heavenly temple at the same time, and they believed that time on earth was the same as time in heaven, and that it all coincided. And it's not like angels aren't slaughtering animals or anything. It's not that.
Right.
They got their own things. But in Revelation 8, we actually get a glimpse of that. I think the Essenes were absolutely correct. So in Revelation 8, we have the angel with the incense and the censer, and he throws it down to earth. All of that is Day of Atonement stuff. That's all Day of Atonement imagery. So and this happens when the temple is desecrated, and we know that because it says there was silence in heaven for half an hour. Why half an hour? It's because that's how long it takes to do the Day of Atonement temple ritual inside the temple. Now the Antichrist is desecrating the temple. He's doing it in an evil way, but it takes half an hour to do that. That's why there's silence in heaven for half an hour. So Day of Atonement. So then you figure out the day counts of the witnesses, because it says exactly how long they're going to be prophesying and when, like how long it'll be before they die and all that. So when you fast forward, and I believe it's at that point also that the bottomless pit is opened up.
Yep.
And it's right at that. I think that's it. Well, when you fast forward 5 months, and that's when the 2 witnesses are killed, there's this odd description in Revelation where it says, people are celebrating in the streets. We get that, but people are giving gifts to each other when these 2 witnesses are killed. And what an odd detail, because I remember, I'm old enough to remember when we killed Osama bin Laden, and everybody celebrated. We're like, oh, good, okay, good, but we weren't giving each other gifts. It wasn't Christmas, and so I never understood what that was about. But when you actually, and I credit my wife for doing the math on this, she actually figured this out for me. But when you actually do the math, fast forward 5 months from the abomination of desolation / Day of Atonement, you land right on Purim. And Purim is a Jewish celebration where they celebrate in the streets, and they do give each other gifts. So this is how you can use this calendar to show to answer some of these questions. So it fits perfectly in the first half of the tribulation. The 2 witnesses, all of their day counts, every prophecy with them on this calendar fits perfectly in the first half. It does not fit in the second half. I've tried. The calendar has something called, like how we have every 4 years or so we have a leap year. Well, to set their calendar, they had a leap week that they would do every 5 or 6 years. So within a 7-year tribulation, there's going to be a leap week somewhere. And I think it's in the second half. But when you try to plug in all the day count prophecies of the 2 witnesses or anything else if you try to plug it into the second half, none of it works. There's no festival days. It's a mess. But it works perfectly in the first half. So that's just to show the legitimacy of this calendar. Now, the exciting part about this is what this means for us prophetically, because not only did they have an understanding of this yearly calendar, the solar calendar, that they said was the original calendar, but they also had a breakdown of human history. They understood all of human history as being a total of 7,000 years. It's based on like the calendar week. And this is why in was it First or Second Peter somewhere where it says that a day with the Lord is like, this is what he's talking about. Yeah, this is all over church father stuff. Like, this is like a real thing. So they believed that there would be 3 ages. An age is 2,000 years to be a saint. That there would be 3 ages, and then there would be a final Sabbath 1,000-year age, which we would know is the millennial reign of Christ.
Millennial reign,
And, so they talked about this in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and so they and we can actually use their calendar to map out when these years would have been, roughly, like within a year or two. So the first age of creation, would have been creation, until the call of Abraham. So right after the Tower of Babel incident. And you'll notice too, there's always some kind of really big worldwide apostasy thing at the end of each of these ages, or some kind of big shaking up of the world. So the Tower of Babel was the first age. The second age was the Torah age, and that was from the call of Abraham to probably 75, 76 AD. And so right after the temple was destroyed. And of course, in that, the last 50 or so years of, the last Jubilee, a Jubilee is 50 years, the last 50 or so years of the age of Torah, you have everything with Jesus first coming, you have all of those prophecies being fulfilled, just major changes. And then we entered into what the Essenes called the Age of Grace. They actually called it that. We call it the Church Age. Sometimes we call it the Age of Grace. And that's another set of 2,000 years that started 75, 76 AD, somewhere around there, and will end 2025 or 2075, 2076 AD. Now, a lot of people freak out when they hear that because they think, oh no, I gotta wait till 2075.
Some of you are like, I'm gonna be dead by then.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's like no. Just like in the age of Torah, they did not have to wait till 75 AD to meet Jesus. Jesus came really early on in that last 50 years. It seems like it's the final Jubilee, the last 50 years that's really important. So Jesus came on the scene probably around, well, I mean, he was born before, but he probably around 29 AD, somewhere around there. And then he was crucified, 32 AD, got Pentecost, Holy Spirit, all that stuff. All of that is decades before the end of that age. Same thing could be true for us. What it means is by 2075 or by 2076, everything should be in place where on that exact time we can start the millennium. So that means a temple needs to be built, a city needs to be built too, because or at least refurbished, and that can take decades. The end of Ezekiel, I take all of that literally, and it gives great description of what the temple is going to look like and this big city that's going to be around there. Well, all of that's going to need to be built, and I really don't think that Jesus, when he returns, is just going to snap his fingers and everything is. People are going to have to make that, I believe.
Okay.
So there's time. You could have, and there's lots of different ways this could work out.
Hi, Jay, good to see you, mate.
It's not the rapture that starts the tribulation.
No, it's the covenant.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's the confirmation of the covenant.
Yep.
So there we could have a rapture at any time. There's no prophecy that needs to be fulfilled for the rapture to happen. That could happen whenever. It could happen before the end of this broadcast. So that could happen, and then you could have decades before the start of the tribulation. It's possible. Or it could happen after like a couple weeks or a month. And then once Jesus returns, it could be like, okay, hey, how long does all the judgment take? How long does it take to gather everybody, judge everybody?
We got a lot of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do. And
Right.
how long does it take to get it out to the world that, hey, this is the way things are going to work now. These are the new rules. How long does it take for mankind to beat their swords into plowshares? All this stuff. And then how long does it take to build the new temple, the millennial temple, and the city? It took Herod, I think, about 30 or 40 years to do that temple. So 30 or 40 years maybe. So you could have.
Do you think that the technology that because we know that there's got to be other tech up there that we just don't even know about, right? But you don't think any technology pieces will come into play and make that timeline sooner because you're
it might.
Okay.
Yeah, it's unknown, so it could, and but I don't know, but I think it's going to be so at the end of the tribulation you have several groups of people. One of the groups of people are the people who have survived the tribulation and have accepted Jesus. They're going to be allowed into the millennium to repopulate the millennium. So these are not regenerate. They're saved, but
they don't have a glorified body though. They're still human beings, right?
Yes,
right. Okay.
Exactly. They don't have, and God has always used those people to build the temples. And when you go through and read Ezekiel and you read the temple rituals and what they do, these are clearly done by just flesh and blood human beings that aren't glorified yet. I mean, there's even rules about how they need to discard their sweaty clothes and stuff, and it talks about the priests with wives have to do this, and so it's very human, not glorified. So I it's a guess, but my guess is it's just going to be those people that actually build this. It could be, there might be some angelic tech or something, but I don't think, I think angels and all that stuff, they have a different role, and I don't think that God is going to have them aiding humans in building the temple, because it's mainly for them anyway. It's not for angels. I don't think we're going to be building the temple either, because it's not for us. It's for them, because in a sense it's not that it goes back to the way that it was in the Old Testament, but there are similarities. There's sacrifices, there's atonement, there's stuff like that. So if I had to guess, I would say I think it's just going to be humans doing it, but it very well could be, I could be way off on that, and it could be that God says, hey, everybody, let's all work together and knock this out in a weekend. So, but that's why there's different ways. We don't have to wait till 2075.
I think they've already built the temple. It's like a Lego set. You just got to put it together. I'm pretty sure about that.
2076 for the return of Jesus or for the rapture or anything like that. I think if the calendar is right, all that stuff is going to happen earlier. It just depends on how we place things. Because again, you could have a rapture, and if time works the same on earth as it does in heaven, well, we're all going to get our rewards. How long does that take?
I know.
The all-new Deliver 7 from just $42,490. Drive away for ABN holders. LDV. Bring it on.
Come into Bunnings and check it out.
Come on, Lou.
That's totally free and fun for the whole family.
Yeah, I'm so sick of picking
We got a lot of us.
Yeah, and it's not even just us who are alive now. That's enough, but it's all the
I
dead
know.
ones, too.
It's all the dead people. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so it's
No.
like I could see that taking maybe 40 years. You know, in heaven, you know, we get our ticket. It's like, okay, I'll get to talk with Jesus and get my rewards in like 20 years, and then until then, I'll just hang out here. And you know, so it could be like that. So there's lots of different ways it could pan out, and I explain it all in great detail in my books. But that's what's exciting about it. So if this calendar is right, it means that right now we are in a Jubilee year, which a Jubilee year is the 50th year of a Jubilee, and a Jubilee is 50 years.
Yep.
So we're technically in a Jubilee year, which means we're in the last year of our current Jubilee. So by, I think it's like early to mid-March of 2026, we will be entering the final 50 years, the final Jubilee of our age of grace, according to the Essenes. One of the hottest subjects in Christian circles today are the shocking revelations coming from the Dead Sea Scrolls and their unique calendar. It seems like they knew more about the arrival of the Messiah than most Christians do today. His arrival did not catch them by surprise. They even knew the exact year of his arrival. Since their calendar got it right the first time, what does it have to say about the timing of the Messiah's next arrival? Why are the years 2025 and 2026 so interesting prophetically? Well, get ready for two highly anticipated, groundbreaking books on the Dead Sea Scrolls from yours truly. Forgotten Prophecies of the Dead Sea Scrolls, Unlocking the Final Jubilee of the Church Age is available now in 2 volumes representing almost...
Geez, that'd be a great read.
700 pages of research on this fascinating subject that has people talking and wondering if we really are living in the final days of human history. Volume 1, which I have right here, delves into the enigmatic Jewish sect called the Essenes and their amazingly accurate prophetic calendars. Volume 2 explores new feasts and festivals that the Essenes observed and their prophetic significance, as well as tying everything together into a coherent prophetic timeline from the foundation of the book of Revelation. Well, according to ancient texts that contain completely accurate prophecies to date, we are on the precipice of entering the final Jubilee of the church age. So who could have known how much influence the writings that this mysterious group of prophets and scribes hundreds of years before Christ would have on our understanding of end times prophecy? Well, as it turns out, much of what we've been taught about Israel in the first century is incomplete. There were, in fact, Jewish believers who knew exactly what to expect in his first coming, that he would be God in the flesh and that he would die for our sins. If they accurately predicted the first arrival of the Jewish Messiah, what did they have to say about his soon return? The revelations found within these books have never been uncovered before, and they affect each and every one of us today. So click on the links in the description below or head on over to prophecywatchers.com to get your copies of my new 2-volume book set today. And I think, like, once that happens, and by the way, again, the rapture could happen before that. So anything can happen at any time. But it seems like the pattern that these ages show is that last 50 years is the really significant time period to be looking at. And if Jesus came early in the final Jubilee of the Torah age, doesn't it stand to reason he may return early in the final Jubilee of our age? And you mentioned Apophis, that does kind of get into that. Do you want me to?
So I have a couple of questions laid out here. So my first thought is, and I'll just, just give the audience context and all of that. I've talked a lot about the Final Four on a lot of my videos and had Pete Garcia come on here. Lee Brainerd has done some amazing work on that subject. Essentially coming to the conclusion that, and I actually need to mention, I've always said I believe that Jesus was crucified in 33 AD, but I realized this week that I was wrong in that, because in my Bibles from 2020, I had the date from going through Sir Robert Anderson stuff, 32 AD. So I don't know where I came up with that 33 on old videos, but it is 32 for me. Anywho, the reason I'm kind of wanted to just pick your brain about this is because I do believe in that theory of the last 4 years of this rapture window, 23, 24, 25, and 26. Now, 23 and 24, we can scratch out with a big black marker, they're gone. But this year is a very big year, and not just for us looking at a 32 AD calendar, meaning 32, if we subtract 7 years off of that, you get 20, right? You get 2025. So I'm looking at that 7-year tribulation beginning this year, right? And taking us there. Okay. So in saying that though, the occult, a lot of this stuff is just fascinating to me on the things that they believe. People like Alice Bailey and all the stuff that they were talking about, her Messiah coming back this year. All this stuff is crazy. And it just all is like, it aligns. It's the inversion of what we believe, but it aligns. And I keep coming back to the same thought of, okay, scholars are in fun disagreement about when the crucifixion took place. 30, 31, 32, 33. You got it across the board. That's the year. But Satan was there. He knows the exact date. Even if you and I are wrong, if Pete's wrong, whoever, he was there. So why is he gunning so much for this year? Because he kind of has more information than we do in that regard, because that's not a solidified thing for everybody.
Yeah.
So my question for you is that with Apophis being like 2029, everybody's talking about this massive asteroid that's going to hit the Earth in 2029, and a lot of you guys have done work about that being Wormwood. That's also, we're getting into that timeline of being 3.5 years away. So that's kind of what I was curious about, like, and I know Gary Stearman, I quote him all the time with this, but he even said it in that clip that I saw with you yesterday from Tom Horn and Gary Stearman. Y'all were talking about this, and Gary said, we're not going to know the day and the hour, but we surely might know the month and the year. Yeah. And so, I'm not a date setter. Everybody knows that, but I'm telling you what, I'm looking at with some big old lenses for this year for a raptor. So go ahead, take it away.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And it's definitely a possibility. And the interesting thing about Wormwood Apophis as well, is that we have 3 potential flyby dates. The 2029 one is the one where it gets the closest. That's like the most serious one. There's also one in 2036, and there's one in 2068. And there might be a couple of others in between there too. But so what Tom thought, he was convinced that the 2029 one was going to be the one, and that is Wormwood. Now, and I will say a lot of this was based on a vision dream that he had. In the specific vision / dream, whatever that experience was that he had, and I fully believe that was real.
Oh yeah.
He wasn't given a specific date there. So he was doing his best to try to piece it together and see, and that's what the whole film Ragnarok was all about.
Yeah, that was it. I was like, I know, I watched the film. Yeah, Ragnarok. Go ahead. Yeah.
But what's interesting is if it is 2029, and I believe, and Tom did too, and I think it can be proven biblically, that Wormwood is right in the middle of the tribulation, and I believe it happens like right after the abomination of desolation, like right at the midpoint. And when you look at when you look at like the trumpet judgments, like the first few of those could easily be all caused by Wormwood, and these are all just different things that are happening in succession from this asteroid hitting the Earth. So basically, it says that something burns up like a third of the land, and then it kills like a third of the sea. So the idea is that Apophis might break up in our atmosphere, break into 2 pieces, and land on the Earth and the sea, and all of that stuff lines up. So if it's April 13th, which is Friday the 13th, because of course it is 2029.
Of course.
Yeah. If that were the midpoint of the tribulation, then and I'm not saying it is or it isn't, I don't know. But if it was, then yeah, you back up 3.5 years, and you're getting right around to our time where it's like we should be getting a rapture pretty soon, like any time now.
Yeah. And I mean, I know everyone has talked about, well, convergence has been going on for a long time, and yeah, I agree with that, but not to the degree that it has now, where the word all means all things are coming into convergence the way that they are. Right. I realize you and I are younger, and we have people in this field that have been studying things for 40 and 50 years. But you ask them that question, and they're like, this time is so different than 30, 40 years ago, 70, 80, 90s, 2000s. It's so different.
Yes, so, and you look at the final few years, like you look at the end of each age, and it's like that. Like the end of the first age, you got the whole Tower of Babel thing. Everything was different and crazy. The end of the Torah age. Well, Jesus absolutely turned the world upside down. Jesus, that spread all over the world. That changed the world. Well, now at the end of our age, this technology and stuff, we've never had this before, but isn't it interesting? We've always had the capabilities of it. We could have built a car 500 years ago. Why not? We could have. We had the material.
Okay, Shawnee.
They weren't actually, if anything, we're a little stupid or not.
Transfer your family that's sick.
Than we were back then because of just DNA degeneration and just entropy. We had the same brains, we had the same materials available to us. We could have developed microchips 1,000 years ago. There's no reason we couldn't have, but for some reason we didn't. It's not until this time. And then it's like once that dam broke, it's like now we're flooded with just the world is a very, very different place than it ever has been. We got satellites and brain chips and I mean it's a totally the internet. It's a totally different world than it ever has been before. It makes sense if this is the end of our age. It makes sense because at the end of every age, some crazy world-changing thing like that has happened, and it would make sense that all of that would be utilized by the kingdom of darkness to implement the things that the Antichrist will want to in the tribulation.
That have to be there, by the way, to have all of that in the tribulation. I mean, the things that Alice Bailey has talked about in her writings, and the golden age, the age of Aquarius, all this stuff. I'm just going, holy moly! Like the parallels of where we're at in the timeline. And I can't think that we can get so much further past the technology that we're in to where we would actually be past what even Revelation alludes to.
Yeah.
I think that that's there too. So again, I mean, I just keep coming up, and again, I'm never going to be that date setter, never going to be that person, but I am looking at this year with very, very large eyes, paying attention to everything, and especially with studying the occult and the things that they are gunning for and what all of our leaders in power are doing. And I mean, they're all aligning with that. And we know that they're influenced by Satan. We know that. So the demonic realm. So I'm going, I don't know. It's just interesting. So that's why I kind of wanted to bring that up, because to me, it's fascinating to see all this stuff converging into one place at one time.
Same here. And, so the Christians might be wondering, well, what's the main takeaway? What do I do? Do I just, we are told that, because a lot of people, I've even heard some Christians saying, I don't even know if I want to even bother having kids because, what if the rapture happens? It's like, well, have kids. If the rapture happens, they'll go with it. Yeah. But like, we're told to occupy until he returns. And so we're supposed to, that this should, if anything, this should light a fire in us where it's like, yeah, time is short. We may not know exactly how short. It might be months. It might be years. Still might be decades. We don't know. But I don't think it's going to be, but it might be.
Yeah, same. But it could be. Could be.
Either way, time still is very, very short. This is the time that we need to really get out there and get our friends and family saved. Like it's time to start. Not that we want to put the pressure on and really like force them into anything, but we need to have some boldness and just be open to talking with our unsaved loved ones about this. And I'll mention too, if anybody's watching this and if you're not saved, man, this is the time to get right with Jesus, because you do not want to be in the world. You don't want to be left here when all of this stuff happens. I believe that, and I know there's a lot of different rapture theories out there. I personally think the best evidence we have that it's pre-trib rapture is the existence of the 24 elders in heaven before Jesus even breaks open the first seal. Those 24 elders, they have the same descriptions as everything that Jesus has promised us for our rewards when we get our glorified bodies and everything. It's the same crown, same robes. They're sitting. Angels don't sit. And we are invited to sit and reign and rule with Christ. Angels aren't afforded that. So everything about also the 24 elders sing this song. You've redeemed us by your blood.
Come on.
The 24 elders are glorified human beings after the rapture. It has to be. Jesus didn't die for angels. He didn't die for demons. He didn't shed his blood for anybody but us. It has to be us. So the fact that the 24 elders are existing in heaven before Jesus even comes into the scene and starts breaking open the seals shows that it's a pre-tribulation rapture. So that being the case, now is the time to get saved. Now is the time to get right with Christ. You don't want to miss out on that, because it's going to literally be a hell of a time if you miss out on that. It's going to be horrible. You most likely will die, and it's not going to be fun. But God is giving us a gift right now. But even besides the rapture, just for the sake of your own soul, like we'll set the rapture aside for now. We all know we're going to leave this life someday. We're going to die. You're going to die. I'm going to die. And again, I said, like, we're setting the rapture aside. Everybody is. So we need to prepare for that. Like, you don't want to just go into that willy-nilly and just hope for the best. That's what most people do. Yeah, that's not smart. you want to reclaim your place, and you want to accept that free gift that Jesus has. That's the reason that he died on the cross, because we can never be good enough. We can never be good enough to earn heaven. That is a perfect place made by a perfect God. We can't have a relationship with a perfect God because our sin gets in the way, but Jesus provides that way. And Jesus was God in the flesh. He died on the cross for you, so that you don't have to die eternally. And what an amazing gift. So anybody listening, if you're not, there's no magic incantation. There's no specific prayer. It is you admitting to God, it's you wanting a relationship with Jesus and saying, like, okay, Lord, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to deny myself. I'm going to follow you, whatever that looks like, whatever that means. And I trust you with my life. I trust you with my eternity, with my soul, with my spirit. I trust you with that. And I'm going to fall. I'm going to sin. I'm going to mess up, but I'm going to keep following you as best as I can. And you making that commitment, that's you accepting the gift of salvation, that he's your Lord and Savior. He died on the cross for your sins. He was raised and resurrected, showing that he has power over death, and he's the only one that can offer you this gift. So that's for all those reasons, so much more. If you haven't yet, please get right with Jesus, because again, time is short. Even setting aside all this rapture, tribulation stuff, time is still short. We only have a few years on this earth. We don't have hundreds of years. So and we don't know how much time we have left. You don't know if you have, if you're unsaved and you're watching, you don't know if you have even the next minute on this earth. So the time is now, and I pray that everybody listening, if you're not saved, that you take that seriously and reach out to Jesus today.
Amen. And you know what? If you are wanting more information, I do have a video in my description box below that explains all of what Josh did, and even in more detail, talking about heaven and hell, how we know these are realities. All of that, go check that out, and that will be a great place for you to go to learn more. But I cannot echo what Josh just said more.
Okay, guys, I'll finish off with Tony. Stan hasn't got anything decent up yet.
Water is the lifeblood of our growing city. But then what happens to it before it gets to your tap?
So many stories to cover. As usual in this video, we have, of course, Cat Williams going off at his latest show, and it's pretty hilarious. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into a number of other stories from overnight. We have Canada reacting to tariffs again, freaking out, saying they're going to do this, that, and the other. And then the next day, they literally changed their mind. We'll show you that. It's kind of hilarious to watch these things happen. We're going to get into what Joe Rogan said. We're going to get into a new thing he said. He's literally saying stuff every day, apparently. We have Tim Cook from Apple. We have Tim Pool. We're going to get into so many different things. Let's just get into this. We'll start here. We'll start with Cat Williams and his latest show, where he had a heckler in the crowd. Someone from Mexico apparently disagreeing about the country that he's currently in. Check this out.
You think I'm just in Mexico and I'm defending America? Because are you Mexican? Do you know where Mexico is? No, this ain't Mexico. It used to be Mexico, motherfucker. And now it's Phoenix.
He's, of course, talking about Arizona. Apparently, they're in Arizona. At one time, yeah, it was owned by Mexico, but no longer. Apparently, a lot of people are now starting to get a little bit more pride back in our country. We're seeing that with Cat Williams. He, of course, continues. Check this out. Yes, indeed. Apparently, Americans now, once again, proud of their country. It's kind of weird considering all the last more than 4 years. However many years things just have been going sideways or actually down. Now we're seeing things.
Even only 4 weeks ago, the lefties ran the show. Since Trump's come in, he's completely turned the tables on them.
Change to where they should be. We're seeing, of course, Elon talking about what our country's supposed to be.
If the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy.
Right. So, of course, when you have people that were not chosen by the people running everything, a fourth segment of the GOV, well, that's what's basically been happening for several years now. Actually, it's been growing for a very long period of time, decades even. And now it's just gotten to a point where it's so big, it's undeniable. And
hang on, check this out. Is he doing the pyramid hand signal?
fourth segment of the GOV,
Okay, that's the pyramid hand signal, isn't it?
well, that's what's basically been happening for several years now. Actually, it's been growing for a very long period of time, decades even. And now it's just gotten to a point where it's so big, it's undeniable. And of course, some wonder about our president. We have people, we have, of course, Bernie Sanders and others going out there saying that they're going to steal your Social Security and things like that. In reality, they haven't even gotten to that sector yet. That agency, right? They're dealing with right now, from what I understand, the Department of Defense. They were dealing with USAID. They got several to go through. I've shown this. I don't even have it open anymore. No, I do have it open right here. There's so many different sectors they have to go through. Of course, they're trying to scare everyone into thinking that they're going to take away, their Social Security or whatever. Right now, they are dealing with this department, which is about 10 times bigger than USAID. USAID was about this big, about 2%. Now they're dealing with about 16%. They're just barely getting started. They have to go through all these different departments. Probably going to take this entire year to go through it all, honestly. And of course, we have this clip here from so many years ago, 1995, showing you how our president operates. Check this out.
But you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about other people. You learn about loyalty. I learned a lot about loyalty. I had people that I would have bet the ranch on, and they were not as loyal as they should have been. Right. And I had people that I wouldn't have, and they turned out to be, unbelievable.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So you just can't tell. It's not color, it's not race, it's not religion, it's not anything like you.
So you can see this is also what happened to him in 2016. Of course, he, being a businessman, not, acclimated to the GOP at that point, first term, obviously had to figure out who he could trust, who he could not trust. Now he knows much better what's kind of going on. So he goes in, first 3 weeks, clearing house. I mean, the guy knows what he's doing this time around. That's why they didn't want him to get back in, because he knew what he was doing now. He's had plenty of time to figure it out, who to trust, who not to trust. This time around is a lot different than last time. He also doesn't have to be concerned about a second term. He's already in it. So this is why. And of course, some good news obviously is Tulsi now has been appointed and confirmed. This just came out today. I think earlier today. I think around noon. So that's some good news. You got her in her position. This is the 14th person already. All right, 14 have already gotten through. RFK apparently is very close. He got through a Senate closure vote, a key hurdle. So he's gotten through two different big hurdles. He has one left. I actually think he's going to get in as well. So that is some good news, because I think both of those people would be a good in their positions once they get in. So anyway, we're going to get into a ton of stuff, like I said. First, I'm going to mention food supply, 25-year shelf life. Link is in the description. 3 months worth for 808. This is a new version. It's not like the old one.
I saw a little bit of that this morning, Vas. I read the headlines and read it a bit, and that was it. But I did read it.
They have literally twice as many different food options in this one. So you're actually going to enjoy the food while you're living in the apocalypse. Well, I mean, it's better than eating the same thing over and over, right? I mean, come on. So, of course, they have a lot more options. They have more calories per day. They racked it back up again. It's 2,500. Usually it's 2,000 plus. $2,500, twice as many options in the food included. It costs a little bit more, 808. Okay, I think it was like about 600 with the cheaper option with less calories, with less options. This has twice as many options, more calories per day, sort of the deluxe version. Link is in the description. Go get that if you have not already. Also, this book here, The Lost Ways. My great-great-grandfather lived without electricity, had to build a cellar, do things around the house like you'll need to know when it happens. And you never know when it will happen. You've seen how the last 4 years have been. Not exactly a cakewalk. And it's not, I mean, honestly, even though things are turning around, you never know what's next. As I mentioned, during the turn of, I guess you would say the century, back during the time of King Arthur, it went from the red dragon's time frame to the white dragon, which is a good thing, went into the Middle Ages. But very shortly into it, they had a super volcano.
AGL's Electrify Now is a free online tool that helps estimate your savings by going electric with solar, batteries, electric hot water, induction cooking and EVs. Discover how you can join the change with AGL today.
Anything's possible with Tip Top Fins.
Whether you're dreaming of a relaxing beach holiday or buzzing city escape, you can get there just by...
Volcano go off around 536 AD. That don't sound good, right? So this is the kind of stuff that could happen. We see natural disasters. We see a lot of strange things. It's always wise to be prepared. Link is in the description. Get the printed version. Of course, also my website, your videos. Lots of deep dives into topics. Link is in the description. Of course, about the cost of a cup of coffee at Starbucks, you get 1 month's worth. Matter of fact, the first month is free. First month is free. Link is in the description. If you don't like it, you can cancel before you even get charged. All right, go check it out. Lots of awesome deep dives into lots of topics. You're going to definitely want to check it out. All right, link is in the description. Let's get back to the video. So we have, of course, a number of things going on. We have tariffs again. He mentioned tariffs on aluminum and steel.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the amount. Was it 10%? I think it was 10%, right?
Not
No, it
25.
was 25%. Was it? No, was it 25? No, that
25.
I think it was 10%. That's 25 was the first initial one with Canada. Now I think it's 10% on metal. It doesn't even say here. I covered it in the previous video. I don't want to go look at it. It's something like that. I think it's 10%. At any rate, a lot of countries are not happy apparently about it. We had, of course, Canada getting all bent out of shape about it as well. I can't spell. I'm trying to look up something. Steel. Come on, man. I can't spell either. I think it's 20.
He's put tariffs on Australian steel as well, and that's because our government's lefty, and the ambassador for America, he's a lefty too, and he really said some bad things about Trump in the last 3 or 4 years. So that's why Trump's made us part of that, where they, what do they call it? Sanctions. No, I've lost my train of thought.
5%. It's 25. It is 25. All right. I don't know why I was thinking it was 10. So at any rate, so it's 25% on steel and aluminum. And this will actually affect Canada also. So it's kind of funny. He's just continually doing this. And some of the people, some of the old guard in Canada are not happy. Check this out. Remember this lady, Miss Freeland, the one that kind of has the weird mannerisms and stuff? I'm sure you've seen that. She just kind of acts strange sometimes. This lady is the one who took, of course, the banks from all those, truckers. You remember that whole thing?
Yeah.
Back, what was that, a couple of years back? 3 years back, maybe. I don't know. Christia says, this will be the biggest trade blow that the United States has ever endured. This includes 100% tariffs on Tesla. Directed, of course, at Elon. Full ban on Wisconsin dairy products. You put a tariff on us with steel, we're going to put these tariffs back on you. Again, it's kind of funny to watch him do this because literally the next day, They come out like, well, wait. It's kind of like good cop, bad cop. You have like, this is the good cop, all right, and you got bad cop, Freeland over here. She's always the bad cop. I'm sure you've seen that. I mean, it takes bank accounts and stuff. But and of course, this is the good cop. You have bad cop versus good cop. Let's play the bad one real quick.
If you force our hand, we will inflict the biggest trade blow that the United States has ever endured.
I can't even take her seriously. Her voice is like, super high pitched, like Dolly Parton. If you do this, I mean, goodness gracious. You can't even take her seriously. Of course, it's not going to work. It's the exact same scenario again. They can pretend that it's not. Let me just explain why it won't work. First, Canada makes 75% of their GDP off us. And a lot of it has to do with manufacturing. End of story. It doesn't matter what tariffs they put on us. They're the ones in the bad position. Okay, we're basically just call their bluff. That's all it is. And that's why you have good cop the next day come out and say, hey, look, we did what he told us to. We appointed a czar, of course, for the border. It's working. He put a 30-day reprieve on the whole thing. Again, they're going to do whatever we tell them. Because 75% of their economy is built on ours. Doesn't matter what we... And that's why he was literally... Again, it was on a hot mic. Trudeau was saying that our president was really serious when he said he wanted to make it the 51st state. Because we have the greater hand. We have the greater hand. No matter what, I don't think there's a scenario where they can actually win with this. So it's just kind of funny to watch. Anyway, so there's that. Of course, we got Bernie here saying that it's all about making the wealthy more wealthy. Of course, Bernie acts as if he's all a blue-collar guy.
President, we are living in a extremely dangerous time.
Yeah, because you're going to lose all your money. You're going to lose all your free money. Is that the reason why, Bernie? I mean, come on. All those interesting little, what do you got, like $10 million there? What do you got it from your $170,000 a year salary? Yeah, okay, dude. I don't know where you got all your money from. Maybe he did get it from all donations from blue-collar workers, but I kind of feel like there's a little bit more going on than that. I just think there is a little bit more. Okay, I think he's getting a little bit more money than just from his blue-collar donators, all right? So, of course, they're trying to say that they're going to rob you of your Social Security or whatever. And a lot of people are seeing right through this. Joe Rogan's been talking about this quite a bit. And, of course, here he is commenting on Bernie. It's pretty funny. And remember, Joe Rogan put his bid behind Bernie Sanders the first time around. And now, full circle, here is Joe Rogan today.
Well, and it's an arms race. How can pharma cloak the money that it's giving so that there's plausible deniability at the point that Elizabeth Warren is confronted or Bernie Sanders?
Bernie Sanders was hilarious. Only 1.5 billion. Only 1.5 million out of 200 million. Only 1.5.
Yep, that's what I saw as well.
Trying to say nothing. Only the hardworking people in this country gave me money.
As I said, that's exactly what he said. Of course, we know there's more than that, Bernie. Come on, man. And, of course, Elizabeth Warren as well. We also have a woke bishop. We're seeing a number of ministers coming out. You remember the woke minister that was criticizing our president at the prayer breakfast? Apparently, she got $53 million of your tax money to resettle those not-so-legals. Oh, that's why she didn't like him. Oh, that's kind of weird. Huh. Yeah, apparently she got $53 million of our money to give it to and help out those that are not even supposed to be here. Yes, that's exactly what happened. Of course, then we have a certain bureau that was started by Elizabeth, Warren. We have a financial watchdog, 1,700 employees to stop working immediately. Of course, he's the OMB director, now acting Consumer Financial Protection Bureau chief, just froze the agency in its tracks, ordering 1,700 employees to halt work immediately instead of demanding more taxpayer cash. is forcing the CFPB to survive on its 711 million stockpile, calling out DC's reckless spending habits. And of course, this, from what I understand, this agency was started by Elizabeth Warren. Just ignore these numbers here, of course.
Sydney, water is your life. And taking care of your water is our life.
Retire with 2024's Super Fund of the Year, so you can stop working and keep.
Of course, those are not donations. They made that hard-earned money themselves, of course. And here she is being asked about this, and not very happy. She's not very happy with the questions, as you can tell.
Why are you so afraid of transparency? Why are you bothered by the fact that Elon Musk is attempting to expose all of this fraudulent spending? What is that about? What is the problem here? What is the problem with transparency? Do not touch me. Do not.
And of course, apparently, this is where she elbowed him, right here. Oh, did it show it? I think, yeah, here you go. You can see her right there. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I'm sure that's gonna knock him over. She's so strong, you know. Honestly, I'm sure he's okay. I'm sure he's okay after that. At any rate, so of course, with all this wonderful corruption around us, I'm just joking, of course. You have also the fact that they printed all that money back in 2020 because they couldn't afford anything back then. They couldn't afford, and all that money didn't go to us. Most of it went to the GOV and their friends. Yeah. So they printed all that money because they apparently hadn't taken enough from you and I. And now you're paying for it in a tax called inflation. I call it a tax because basically you're just paying a tax for these people for taking your money. That's basically what inflation is. They printed money. It's essentially taking the value from your wallet. Now, of course, all these stores are closing. Supposedly 15,000 is going to close this year. Retail apocalypse. And, of course, so many different stores. You have here a wonderful list of stores. Toys R Us, Route 21, Payless Shoe Source. I mean, goodness gracious, a very large list. As you can see here, a lot of them are mall stores or just, what do you call them? Strip mall stores, Vitamin World, all these different ones going out of business. Of course, I hope with this, some of the turnaround we're seeing, this will make it a lot smaller on the closures. Hopefully it won't be 15,000. Hopefully it'll be a lot less than that. They're estimating that many this year. They're estimating literally double of last year for this year. I guess we'll see what happens with all that. And Amazon, Walmart, I'm going to get into all that. And I honestly, I got a lot more to get through here. I'm only halfway done. I got so much stuff. I'm going to get into some of this other stuff over my other channel. But I wanted to get into this. I thought this was interesting. We have some really strange things going on. Okay. I'm going to get into the Tim Cook over my other channel as well, I think. But we have here some really strange things happening. You remember they're all like protesting the closure of USAID and stuff like that. Check out what she had to say. This is really bizarre.
Let me tell you something. I'll take a bit of umbrage here. I'll speak on behalf of my colleagues. I think I can say we are all willing to work with anyone who's serious about doing the work of censoring the American people and advancing progress.
What? What? Yes, you heard her correctly. Yes, you heard her correctly. She literally said that. Are you serious? Apparently, that's why no one clapped. You noticed everyone was kind of silent when she said that. Like, oh, did she just screw up? Apparently, she didn't screw up. She meant what she said there. Of course, she was also asked by that same reporter about all these questions about ridiculous spending in USAID and stuff like that. And she's just like ignoring him the entire time. We do have to be fair, though. We do have to be fair. We had some, remember, we did have a little weird thing happen a few months ago. On the right, you remember the whole thing with Tim Pool? You remember that? And getting a bunch of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Remember that whole thing? Here he is commenting on the USAID, saying, you know, what about hundreds of thousands going to media outlets. And then, of course, Milo had to point out to him, you did the same exact thing, bro, when you got money from a certain country.
Not intentionally. No, I would never accuse David Pakman of knowing anything. Sure. There very well may be. That was good. There very well may be individuals who their ad person comes to them and says, this NGO wants to spend $100,000 in ads on your show. And they say, you're doing that conservative thing, giving too much credit. No, I'm saying in general, big picture. No, you know exactly where the money's coming from. Ruben knew where the money was coming from. It was coming from Russia. He used it to buy his children. That is 100% false. And you know that ropes me into it, and I can verify it's 100% false. All right. Completely untrue. So, and this is important big picture stuff because USAID is funneling money to NGOs. Irresponsible in the extreme to the point of ludicrous negligence to not know where hundreds of thousands of dollars are coming from. To not even ask.
Oh, pause it for 1 second. Pause it 1 second. Now, well, let me explain to you what's going on here. Milo does not realize that Tim Pool was roped into this. And when Tim says you're roping me into this now, Milo still doesn't register. Now, I just want to make this clear.
That's hilarious, dude. Apparently, Milo's not privy to all the stuff that happened back then. And Tim Pool, of course, took bunches of money from it as well. It's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing as a lot of these media outlets like BBC and Politico getting a bunch of money from, of course,
hey guys, I'm
ID. It's just a different source, but it's kind of interesting. It's whenever there's a lot of big money,